Imagine standing at the edge of a battlefield that decides the fate of an empire. Ahead of you rises a line of hills, trenches carved into clay, concrete bunkers, hidden guns, and behind them, Berlin itself. One final barrier, one final gamble. If this line holds, the war drags on. If it breaks, the Third Reich collapses. It is April 1945. The Red Army is ready to strike. But one mistake here could cost tens of thousands of lives and delay victory by days or even weeks. How much is a single day of peace worth when thousands of lives are at stake? This is the question Marshal Zhukov had to answer. This is the story of the assault on the Seelow Heights, the bloodiest gate to Berlin, and the decision that almost turned triumph into disaster. The Berlin offensive was meant to be the final act of the war in Europe. The plan was bold, massive, and brutally simple. Two Soviet fronts would advance at the same time. From the north, the First Belarusian Front under Marshal Zhukov. From the south, the First Ukrainian Front under Marshal Ivan Konyev. Zhukov was assigned the main blow. His armies would break through from the Kustrin bridgehead on the Oder River and drive straight toward Berlin. 5 combined arms armies, 2 tank armies, hundreds of thousands of soldiers, thousands of guns and tanks. But between Zhukov and Berlin stood a single obstacle, the Seelow Heights, a 20-kilometer ridge running along the Oder, a natural fortress turned into a concrete nightmare. Endless trenches, concrete bunkers, machine gun nests, anti-tank ditches, artillery positions, mines, barbed wire. This was the strongest defensive node protecting Berlin. It was held by the German 9th Army and the 56th Panzer Corps. And commanding Army Group Vistula was General Gotthard Heinrici, a defensive genius. Heinrici knew Zhukov was coming, and he knew exactly how the Red Army fought. If you were in Heinrici's shoes, facing a force 10 times your size, would you stay and fight, or find a way to make the enemy's own strength work against them? So he did something unexpected. April 16th, 1945, 2 hours before dawn, Soviet bombers were already in the sky, striking German headquarters and supply depots throughout the night. Then, at 5 o'clock in the morning, Moscow time, the earth exploded. Thousands of Soviet guns opened fire at once, the most powerful artillery preparation of the entire war. The plan called for 30 minutes of fire, but after reconnaissance in force and last-minute analysis, it was shortened to about 20. Then came the psychological weapon. 143 anti-aircraft searchlights snapped on at once, flooding the battlefield with blinding white light. The idea was simple: blind the Germans, illuminate the targets, break their will. At first, it worked. The German front line appeared shattered. The first Soviet assault units surged forward. For 2 hours, resistance was weak. German fire was scattered and disorganized. By dawn, Soviet armies had advanced 1.5 to 2 kilometers. In many sectors, the first line of defense seemed to be taken. It looked like a breakthrough. But it was an illusion. Heinrici had quietly pulled most of his troops off the first line before the barrage began. The artillery hit empty trenches, destroyed abandoned bunkers, pounded ghosts. Imagine the shock of the Soviet soldiers. They had just witnessed the greatest barrage in history, only to find the enemy completely untouched. What would that do to your morale? And when the smoke cleared, the real German defense revealed itself. As daylight broke, the battlefield turned into chaos. Smoke from the artillery hung thick in the air, so thick that many Soviet soldiers later said they could not even tell whether the searchlights were on or off. General Vasily Zhukov, whose 8th Guards Army was attacking the heights directly, later admitted that the searchlights gave no real help. After the artillery, the battlefield was covered by a wall of smoke, and instead of helping, the illumination only made things worse. Then the Germans opened fire. The terrain forced Soviet troops into narrow corridors between marshes and canals. Men bunched together, perfect targets. Machine guns, mortars, hidden artillery ripped into the assault waves. By 10 in the morning, Soviet units reached the second defensive line. The Germans called it the Berlin Castle. This line was intact, fully manned, bristling with guns. By noon, Zhukov faced a nightmare. His infantry could not break through. Every minute of delay meant something worse, because to the south, Konev was moving fast. In the heat of battle, what's more dangerous, the enemy in front of you or a rival general behind you, threatening to take your glory? While Zhukov was bleeding on the Seelow Heights, Ivan Konev's first Ukrainian front was advancing. Konev crossed the Neisse River. His tank armies reached the Spree, then crossed that too. He was advancing fast, too fast. If Konev reached Berlin first, Zhukov's career would be over. The political pressure was enormous. Stalin was watching, the entire world was watching. Zhukov made a desperate decision, one not in the original plan. He ordered his tank armies into battle early. Was this a brilliant tactical move to maintain momentum, or a reckless gamble fueled by ego? What do you think? At around 2 in the afternoon, the 1st Guards Tank Army under General Mikhail Katukov and the 11th Independent Tank Corps under General Yushuk were thrown into the assault. The problem was the terrain. Narrow roads, soft ground, flooded fields, destroyed bridges. The tanks were forced into tight columns, and the Germans were waiting. From the heights, German artillery poured fire down into the Soviet armor. Sometimes multiple shells hit the same tank. Infantry crawled through folds in the terrain, closed in, and used Panzerfausts at point-blank range. Katukov later wrote with brutal honesty, "When we reached the Seelow Heights, we deployed and rushed forward. All our attempts failed. Anyone who leaned forward burned instantly. An entire German artillery corps stood on those heights. The defense was not broken. The early tank commitment turned into a disaster. Tanks burned in the mud. Crews were killed before they could even fire back. The breakthrough still did not come." And with every passing hour, Konev was moving closer to Berlin. Zhukov now faced a nightmare scenario. His main assault had stalled. His reserves were being destroyed. And the political clock was ticking. If Seelow did not fall soon, Berlin might fall to someone else. Can you imagine the sight? Hundreds of tanks trapped in a swamp, being picked off one by one. At what point does a commander say, enough? Zhukov threw in his last reserve the 2nd Guards Tank Army under General Semyon Bogdanov. The 1st Mechanized Corps under General Ivan Krivoshein broke through near Platkow and reached the village of Karlsdorf. Into this breach rushed the 12th Guards Tank Corps and units of the 5th Shock Army. General Nikolai Berzarin crossed Reichsstrasse 167 and reached the foot of the Seelow Heights. On April 17th, the full weight of Soviet artillery came down again. The density reached 250 guns per kilometer of front. It was one of the heaviest barrages in history. Could anything man or machine truly survive that kind of hell? But even now, many German firing points survived. Concrete bunkers absorbed shell after shell. All day and all night, brutal fighting continued. Men fought for meters of ground, for trenches, for ruined farmhouses, for slopes covered in bodies and burning vehicles. Only by the morning of April 18th did Soviet tank and rifle units, supported by the 16th and 18th Air Armies, finally seize the Seelow Heights. The 5th Shock Army and the 1st Mechanized Corps of the 2nd Guards Tank Army pushed through to the eastern outskirts of the town of Müncheberg and stood one step away from the 3rd German defensive line. At the same time, Trukhov's 8th Guards Army began to outflank the heights from the north. The wall was finally cracking, but the Germans were not finished. By the end of April 18th, the main forces of the 1st Belarusian Front reached the 3rd defensive line, and again, they met fierce resistance. The Germans threw almost all their operational reserves into the battle, everything they had left. Units pulled from Berlin's outskirts, training battalions, rear area troops, any formation that could still hold a rifle. The Germans were now using children and old men to hold the line. Was there any tactical logic left in this defense, or was it just pure, blind fanaticism? They were fighting not for territory anymore. They were fighting for time. But time was something they no longer had. By the end of the 4th day of the offensive, Zhukov's troops finally broke through the 3rd line of defense and entered open operational space. By the evening of April 19th, the front had advanced 30 kilometers toward Berlin. 15 German divisions had been shattered. Only 30 kilometers now separated Zhukov's armies from the capital of the Third Reich. The road to Berlin lay open. The last gate had fallen. But the price had been terrifying. In his post-war memoirs, Marshal Zhukov admitted a painful truth. A mistake had been made. He wrote that the complexity of the terrain at the Seelow Heights had been underestimated, and that this miscalculation had delayed the operation by 1 to 2 days. Those 1 or 2 days cost tens of thousands of lives. The total Soviet losses during the assault on the Seelow Heights were around 20,000 men. About 6,000 of them were killed. Zhukov admitted his mistake in his memoirs, a rare move for a Soviet marshal. Does this admission make him a better leader, or just a more honest one? For the Germans, Seelow was the last real chance to stop the Red Army outside Berlin. For the Soviets, it became the bloodiest single battle of the entire Berlin offensive. The Seelow Heights were not just a battlefield. They were a test of will, a test of leadership, a test of how much blood could be spent for speed and political pressure. And in the end, it worked. Berlin was now within reach. The Seelow Heights fell. The Ninth Army was broken. The road to Berlin was open. But victory did not come clean or easy. It came soaked in mud, blood, and fire. It came with burned tanks, shattered divisions, and a brutal lesson in how even the final battles of a war can be the most deadly of all. Was the assault on Seelow a necessary sacrifice to end the war faster, or a tragic miscalculation driven by rivalry and political pressure? What is your verdict? Let us know in the comments. If you found this story of the last gate to Berlin gripping, hit the like button and subscribe for more untold chapters of the Second World War, for Seelow, for Berlin, and for history.